welcome to Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast with your hosts, Buddy Sotelo Esquire, Mike Leno, and Evan Ginsberg. Evan, would you like to introduce our guest for tonight?
Absolutely. We have a true Renaissance man. He's a Nuyorican-born comedian, author, former indie wrestler, talk show host in his own right. Our friend Rafael Gee. How are you, Rafael?
Hey guys, how you doing? Thank you for having me on the show.
Oh, my pleasure, my pleasure. Why don't we start with the book? This sounds really interesting. Confessions of a Concierge. Tell us about that.
That book was actually written on a journal about 2009. I was just writing stuff that I was seeing as working as a concierge in New York. And I just left it in the cloud for about 10 years. It was my experiences and watching how the rich and infamous live. And a buddy of mine who wrote a couple of books, I see that he was getting very good reviews and stuff. And I just handed it over to him. I said, hey, what do you think about this? And he was like, well, let me see. And I sent it to him. And he was like, you got to print this. You know, this is very interesting. It's truthful about what you see and everything in the everyday life of a building where people who got money and have careers and businesses and everything, how they really live behind closed doors. Because when they're out in the public, there's somebody else, but when they're in their own environment, it's a totally different person.
It's a lot more Bonfire of the Vanities than Stuart Little, huh?
Yeah. I mean, there were some great people there. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the New York Jets. I had Tony Richardson live in the building.
Wow.
And he was one of the nicest people you will ever meet. When we had a lot of things in common because we both had family in the military. You know, he was an Army brat. My brother was serving in Camp Victory in Iraq, and his sister was the commanding officer there.
Wow.
So we started talking, and I'm a Giants fan, but my brother's a huge Jets fan. So when my father got sick, we had called my brother over through the Red Cross, and Tony found out about it and gave him a signed jersey. They had like a 3-hour discussion on football and everything. And that was one of the nicest people I met in the building, and we're still friends to this day. But there was a lot of characters in there, and a lot of ugliness that I saw behind the scenes. Because, you know, I had to deliver these people's packages. I had to drop off laundry for them and everything. And when you see them at home, some of them were, like I said, some of them were nice people, but some of them were out there. Very out there.
I'm a lifelong New Yorker, and as you can tell by my accent, and every so often in New York, you'll see a front page headline, some crazy rich person, millionaire, billionaire, just jumps out the window of a high rise, you know, $1 million apartment, multi-million-dollar apartment. And it really makes you think, like, you know, what's going on when it seems like everything, you know, everything's there for them, but it's not. So what is some of the funniest, craziest, most tragic, strangest, without giving away the whole book? We want people to buy the book, but tell us, you know, some of the memories of that place.
Well, there was one incident that I can't stop thinking about, because it goes to show how some of these people who got money think that they can treat you with, like, if you're nothing, you know. There was a lady that lived across the street from the building that I worked at, and she used to work in the Spanish station, Univision, as like a variety type person. You know, she would talk to the stars and all this stuff or whatever. So one day she had left her keys at the studio, and her daughter was having a slumber party, right? And it was cold. It was sometime in December, right before Christmas. And they didn't have a doorman in her building, but we had a concierge in ours. So she came across the street and she asked me if I can watch the kids for a few minutes in a warm environment instead of waiting outside, because she had to catch a cab back to the studio, pick up her keys to come back. I said, no problem. You know, me being a father, I understand the situation. You know, kids were young and everything. So, you know, I had some snacks that I keep in the desk, you know, that I would give to the tenants' kids or stuff like that. And I, you know, entertained them. It only took like 20 minutes. She came back, got the keys, said thank you and everything. She tried to give me a tip. I said, look, it's on me because I know what it is to be a father and stuff like that. And, you know, went on her day. And then as the months go by, you know, I know she was a busy person. You didn't really see her. So one day I saw her, you know, I'm standing outside the building. It's a nice spring weather. And I saw her get out of a cab, going to bed. I said, hey, how you doing and everything? And she just looked at me like I was a piece of crap, you know, like, who are you? Ill, you know, you're a concierge. I said, okay, sooner or later it's going to happen. And she's going to need me again. And every time I get to, you know, I said hello, she still gave me the look. Up to one time, she just like went like, psst. So I said, okay, I'll get back to you. Me being a New Yorker like you, Evan.
Yeah.
There's so many times you poke the bear that we start to poke back.
Yes.
So one day she was in this short mini skirt, high heels. I mean, she looked like a natural born hooker. Okay?
Yeah.
Natural born hooker. And she's walking up and down the block for like an hour. So I got a buddy of mine who was a cop at the nearest precinct. I gave him a call and I said, yo, listen, I think there's a hooker working in front of the building. And, you know, these people are complaining about it. They told me to call you. So he sent a couple of undercovers.
Wow.
To the block. Wow. And they approached her. They were like, excuse me, you know, we're getting complaints. It's possible that you are soliciting and all this stuff. Oh, she caught a fit. Oh, don't you know who I am? I am so-and-so, blah, 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 blah. And she was getting like really rough with them when they were at a point that they were going to arrest her.
Wow.
For, you know, causing a ruckus in the street. And then the officers acting her for ID. She's refusing to show ID. I mean, she swore she was above the law. And then eventually she gave it. After that, when I saw her, she wouldn't even look at me or nothing. I'm like, okay, I got you. You know,
yeah.
That's good for you.
And that was one of the adventures I had there. But in the book, I didn't want to get into any trouble, so I didn't use no real names.
Right.
What I did in the book was I gave everybody a title. Like there's one called the hippie. You know, she was a hippie from the 60s and everything. Nice lady, but she had some issues. There was a gay married couple there that I respect dearly. I call that one the doctor and his bride and his groom.
Yeah.
That's their characters. And there was a time where I got sick. I had some kidney issues and I was really bad in the hospital. And when I got back from you know, I had some time off and I got back to work, he checked on me every day. Like he was like, show me what they did, show me the prescriptions, show me everything. I mean, he made sure that I had the proper fluids. His husband gave me the proper, you know, they would bring me lunch once in a while, you know, healthy stuff to eat and everything. And they never disrespected you because you were straight or whatever the situation may be. They were very kind, loving people, you know. And then, but like, unfortunately, like me, you know, I grew up in the 70s where it wasn't that proper yet for you to be in the gay community. But in my family, they taught us that no matter what you are, you treat them the same. But I grew up in the East Village, so I saw the hate and the love at the same time, you know. So and in the book, I explained that, you know, I was told by certain people in my family that this is a bad thing, but meanwhile, they're the most beautiful people that ever treated me with any respect, you know. So I talk about that. I talk about quite a few things in the book where other concierges will reflect on what I saw, you know. Now, there's, like I said, there's people there that treat you with the utmost respect, show you crazy love. And then there's people where you're like, oh my gosh, she's such an angel in the street, but look at the way she sounds talk. I mean, the walls were thin.
Yeah.
The walls were thin. When I tell you guys the walls were thin, I heard women telling things to their husbands that I'm surprised these guys haven't committed murder yet.
Wow.
You understand what I'm saying? And then when she's in public, she's daddy's little angel, you know, because he bought the house for them and everything. I'm like, oh my God, I can't be with a woman like that. It was crazy. It was an experience I'll never forget.
I have a friend who was a personal trainer in the Hamptons, and he would say that these millionaire couples, the husband knew about the wife's boyfriend, and the wife knew about the husband's mistress, and they both made believe like they didn't know because they didn't want to split the assets 50-50. And crazy
Hold on,
stuff.
I want to read something to you guys.
Okay.
I got the non-sellable copy of the book.
Okay.
In the book, like I said, what I wrote in the book, it's basically, it says, this book is about the people I had the pleasure and displeasure to meet. Sometimes your experience will shape your story. There was some, like, I got one chapter called The Sad Couple. They were an interracial couple. She was Hispanic, he was Asian. They had a beautiful little girl. She spoke English, Chinese, and Spanish at the age of 6.
Wow.
Perfectly. Spoiled little brat, but she did it perfectly. They were one of the most unhappiest people you will ever meet. And then once you read the book, you'll understand why. Because I'm like, you got everything that a blue collar guy like myself would love to have for his family, a nice condo or nice home where, your family can live comfortably and everything. And it wasn't a bad neighborhood. It was in Long Island City where all these new buildings are going up. If you're familiar with Long Island City, Queens, it's like the new Manhattan.
I worked in Long Island City in the 80s and 90s, and people were talking about buying property, and I would be like, but what about those needles in the parking lot? What about those hookers over there? I wish I bought property back then. What a mistake.
Evan, when I tell you it's a new city.
I know. I was there like 2 weeks ago.
The building that I worked for was called the Badge Building. Back in the 50s, 60s, I was told, in the 70s, they would make the police badges and EMS badges for like the tri-state area. They were the actual manufacturers of the badges, whether you're a cop or whatever you were. And they converted it into a 6th-floor, 24 apartment condominium. Mm-hmm. And the area was still semi-industrial, but they really cleaned it up all the way to the waterfront and everything. And the reason why I got that job there was because it was during the recession, and I was working off the books on my buddy's route. He had a FedEx home delivery route, and I used to deliver to that building. And it was kind of odd that every other building around the area, there's a concierge in the front desk. But every time I went, there was a super in the front desk. And I'm like, what are you doing here in the front desk? And he was like, oh, these guys don't show up to come to work. They call out the last minute. Somebody has to cover the front. So I applied. I was tired. I was tired of, going up and downstairs and delivering packages and everything. I wanted something where I would go every day. And I took the job for a little while, and it was an experience that I'll never forget.
There you go. How do people get the book?
You can go on Amazon, and it's called, they have it under Confessions of a Concierge. Or you can go to ajbpublishing.com. That's the publishers that put it together for me. A second book will be out at the end of the year, God willing. It's called Mi Vida Loca, Tales of a Nuyorican. That's about me growing up in the 70s and 80s in New York. A lot of adventures. I can't say life experience. I got to call it adventures because it was all adventures. And it'll show how much fun the 80s were compared to what everything is now. Because I grew up, I was born in 71, and I grew up most of my life at the end of the 70s and throughout the whole 80s. And it was a decade that to me was the greatest decade of all time.
Well,
in my lifetime.
The East Village back in that era, it was an incredibly creative environment. I mean, you had hip hop artists, you had commercial artists, you had rock musicians, everything imaginable. It was an amazing time, and a lot of those. Yeah,
I loved it. I grew up on East 2nd Avenue and 9th Street. My father used to work for a Jewish deli. My mother used to work for a laundromat right there on 2nd Avenue. The Jewish deli was right next door, so they always were in touch with each other. We were actually a block away from 2nd Avenue Deli at the time, which was one of the most famous delis in Manhattan. My father used to deliver fish to them, so we used to get free pastrami sandwiches and stuff like that. And we used to go to lots of Cat's Deli. Back in the 70s and 80s, Delancey Street had a movie theater. That was one of the only movie theaters in New York that would play Spanish-speaking movies, like with Vicente Fernandez. That's where I became a wrestling fan, Evan, because that's where I used to watch the Mil Mascaras movies, the Los Santos movie,
Tell us about that. Tell us about that.
Oh, those were great times. Back then, they had a theater on Delancey Street in Essex. It was the only one in the area at the time that played Spanish movies, like what you guys call spaghetti westerns with Clint Eastwood and everything. Mexican movies were like that, but the only difference was that they sang in the movies after they shoot the guy.
Yeah.
Like a romantic thing, like "Papa, te quiero mucho" and all that stuff.
Yeah.
My father was an independent wrestler in the 70s. He trained.
What was his ring name?
His name El Chavo Boricua, which I take after El Chavo Boricua Jr. My father, used to work out with Pedro Morales, Johnny Rods. When my father used to deliver fish, we used to deliver fish to Bruno Sammartino's house in Coney Island.
Wow.
We used to drop off fish over there. So whenever the movies came out with Mil Mascaras, Blue Demon, and Santos, we always used to go see it because to us, they were superhero movies. Like Mil Mascaras would fight zombies or Dracula, and Santos would fight the Werewolf Man and everything. So we start when that, seeing my father wrestle and seeing these guys wrestle, I grew up watching Bob Backlund, Pedro Morales, Tony Gurria, Goliath, and forgot his tag name.
Gorman and Goliath.
Yeah, Gorman and Goliath. I used to watch them. We used to watch. My grandmother was a huge fan of Andre the Giant. Like that was her lover, like her man. And we used to watch it on when they used to come on at Channel 9 late at night.
Midnight.
So we used to watch it there. And I grew up in the wrestling world. I grew up in the entertainment field, and then writing the book was just like another step of sharing what I did at work. But the second book is going to talk about my life, watching my dad wrestle, going to the movies and watching. Those movies were great, despite their B movies, but how many B movies?
Being generous.
Yeah, but how many B movies did we watch that we will still watch today and be like, oh, that was a great movie, like The Toxic Avenger or something like that, So watching those movies was great because that's where we learned Mexican wrestling. Because you recall, Evan, Mexican wrestling wasn't really being that shown on TV at the time. You had to learn from it from the books, the Spanish wrestling books, where they had, Mil Mascara's brother, Dos Caras, and all these guys. And you would learn about the Guerreros and everything through the books. But when you watch the movies, we were like amazed because we're like, wow, that's a superhero that can wrestle and fight at the same time,
You learned all your wrestling holds from Mil Mascaras wrestling zombies.
Actually, yeah, I learned wrestling before I actually learned wrestling because when my dad used to take us, my dad used to wrestle at the Pitt Street Wrestling Crew, which was Pitt Street, which is right on the other side of the bridge. You had the Pitt Street projects and all that there. They didn't have what they have now. Like the wrestling gym would be like in the basement of a store with the two steel doors that open up.
Remember PK?
Yeah. So we used to only run 3 sides of the ring because one part was next to the wall, so you couldn't hit the wall. So I only learned how to run the ring from one side to another. And, it's not when I started wrestling at 45 where I learned how to run the ring from all 4 sides. But when I was a kid, you didn't want to hit the wall because you end up getting hurt. And back then, those were real rings. They ain't like they are now. This was real.
Dr. Mike has a question. Dr. Mike.
I've got a couple. Rafael, I've been shooting for, Evan knows, for decades and decades and decades for the magazines. Los Angeles was my home base territory. So that's actually where Pedro Morales won his first world title in like 1963, 64. Mil Mascaras came in for us, his very first territory outside of Mexico itself for Paco Alonso, and the Lucha promotion was Los Angeles in 1967. And later on, Black Gorman and Great Goliath came in, and all of that stuff. And our office would send them, particularly Gorman, Goliath, Mascaras, a bit later when Billy Graham was champion. Although he came in, you might recall, Mascaras came in, and Vince McMahon Sr., told him about the mask rule in '73, and how guys like Don Jardine, the Spoiler, and El Olímpico, who was actually, I'm not sure, I think he was Puerto Rican, had to cut the hole in front of their mask. So Mascaras said, well, I ain't coming in, unless I can wear my full mask. I'm not going to expose and ruin, this career I've cultivated. So he debuts against Don Jardine, this famous masked wrestler, the Spoiler, who they always say.
Actually, he's one of my favorites.
And Don Jardine has, so you can see his whole mask. He has, or his face. The face is cut out because of the New York ban on masked wrestlers. Mascaras could wrestle himself, and later on he came back and had, I think, 3 title matches with Billy Graham. But hopefully you get to hear Madison Square Garden like I did when Morales, would come in after Bruno's reign, and the place would be rocking. And it was deafening for Bruno and Pedro, obviously the Shea Stadium thing. But let me give a quick update on the AEW pay-per-view. Hookhausen won the opening free match, and let's see, the House of Black defeated Death Triangle, and then the couple, Britt Baker and Adam Cole, won their respective Owen Hart tournament matches, which is kind of disappointing. I think a lot of us were hoping Ruby Soho and Samoa Joe would win.
But how were they? How were the matches?
They were pretty good. I mean, there was interference in the Samoa Joe thing. He's kind of limited now because he's put on weight and he's had an injury or two. So they had Bobby Fish and Kyle O'Reilly interfere. That's all I was able to sort of fast forward.
When I hear they were pretty good, it doesn't sound motivating like must see.
No, I'm talking for AEW because they have incredibly fun. All their TV's excellent, outstanding. I'm giving them like A- B+ as matches. I hate rating them, but far better than I can't even watch. I just have to fast forward through WWE at this point. And AEW, I will sit and watch in real time. I watch their NXT program in real time. That's WWE's farm system, but it's very difficult for somebody that watches Lucha from Mexico, watches New Japan and AEW and all of that stuff. I think this book would be fun. It's crazy how some wealthy people will treat you as equals, and then others, think they're better than others. And
certainly we have our share of that in the Bay Area and in Los Angeles, where Mike is at too. It's not like
it's worse. It's worse here. I miss my people. We were forced to move back down here to take care of my mother-in-law, but I miss my people in Oakland, and all of the mentality is more like New York. I just miss it terribly. I miss my Golden State Warriors. One thing I was going to say, it has nothing to do with anything, but I do want to thank Russ for getting Mike Modest on. That was a job well done, Russ. And also, I can't recommend this movie highly. I'm recommending this very highly. I'm giving it an A+. If anybody, I know this is off topic, like Ghostbusters, The Afterlife, the thing that Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray helped put together.
Oh, that was a great movie.
It was awesome. I couldn't believe it that I missed it. And I couldn't believe, what did they do with Harold Ramis? Because he's been dead at least 6-7 years.
Yeah.
They did.
They showed the making of it. And they were very limited on how they did that special effect in the end where they show him coming back. But they actually did a lot of like 3D type sculpture or stuff to get the face down right. And all they had was a guy in a green suit with a green mask and played him to the T.
Because he didn't do any of that hugging in any of the prior movies,
oh,
whether it was the 2 Ghostbusters or not. And it looked exactly like him. It didn't look like phony computer generated, like Robert De Niro in that picture a couple of years ago. There was
Peter Cushing's been in Star Wars long after he was dead.
Yeah.
This I've
They
never.
always did it in like a hologram where you couldn't really see him that clearly, and that kind of thing. But this,
It was on cable. I think it debuted last night, and I from start to finish.
It's a great movie.
Man, it was great.
Talking about movies, Evan, I know you and I, when I was on your show before with NEW, we were talking about TV shows and everything. I caught this movie on Prime. I don't know if you guys would want to watch it. It's based on the hospital that took care of John F. Kennedy when he got shot, when he got assassinated. It's just based on the hospital, like everything that happened to it. I can't remember. I think it's called Hospital. I'll find out the name for you now. But it was a sleeper. It was a really good movie that actually reflected on the assassination of John F. Kennedy, because if you notice, all the movies is about the assassination and investigation. Assassination, investigation. This was actually from paperwork and eyewitnesses that were in the hospital. They actually interviewed the head nurse that she was still alive until the movie was done. And one of the doctors, I think he survived. I think he's still alive. And he gave his detail on how everything went crazy and everything. And it was on Prime. A lot of great actors.
I think they should bring Kennedy back like they did with Harold Ramis. I think they
did something like that.
Those nut job Republicans were those QAnon creeps. They're still waiting for John Kennedy Jr. to come and help them out or some stupid thing and turn over the election back to Trump. You heard that craziness, right?
Yeah.
The movie's called Parkland. Parkland. If you get a chance, watch it. It's a really good movie. I've always been into like real life story movies, and I know, Evan, I know you're a big TV buff and everything. I know you and I love The Wire.
Oh, The Wire is my favorite show of all time.
Have you watched this show called We Own This City?
No. How is it?
Whoever did The Wire created this show.
Really? I gotta see.
And a lot of the old
cable.
actors.
Who's it on?
It's on HBO Max.
Really? Okay.
It's called We Own This City.
Yeah,
it's a 6-part series. I think they already showed 4 or 5 parts. All the young guys who were in the Wire movie are all grown up in this movie, but they're playing different parts. The guy who played the Punisher is on here. There's a lot of great actors. About time we needed this type of police show to come back, and it's really good.
I still haven't recovered from This Is Us, the last episode the other night.
Please.
Oh my God!
So, Rafael, I even though I'm not from New York, I have a lot of connections with New York. In fact, my wrestling managerial character was based in New York. Buddy Sotelo. I always said, because people have always thought when I wasn't a Jew from San Francisco, they thought I was an Italian from New York. They really did. And so I've always played that up. And there's always been a really strong connection between San Francisco and New York. Of course, the Giants came out from New York. My parents were originally from New York and moved out to San Francisco where they met. And so I've always felt a very strong connection to it. But I think there's something about New York that's just so American. Do you want to expound upon that and some of what you did as an author, how that ties into all that?
I traveled a lot in this world. Not very far, but I traveled a lot. I've been outside the country. I've been down south and everything. Despite whatever you want to say about New York City, whether it's good or bad, it's still, to me, the greatest city in the world.
Oh, it's great. No doubt about it.
It's the greatest city in the world. I mean, I remember going down to Fort Lauderdale during the springtime in the 80s, where they used to have these big parties and everything. And MTV used to have spring break shows. You ever notice that all those shows were recorded in the daytime?
Because there's nothing that goes on at night there.
Exactly. Like after 12 o'clock midnight, Fort Lauderdale becomes like dead. So I was like, wait a minute, 12 o'clock midnight, New York City, we're just started. We just started. I mean, I love visiting DC. I loved visiting Miami. I was out west in Fort Sill in Oklahoma, great town, Oklahoma City. But there's nothing like New York. There's nothing.
You're right. People have dinner at like midnight. People start dinner at midnight.
You can have breakfast. You can have breakfast at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and nobody will look at you funny because you like.
I used to do 3 a.m. radio. 3 a.m. radio.
Yeah.
It's always hard for the West Coasters to adjust to what goes on in New York when we come out to visit. It seems like everybody is up at all hours. And when do you ever get time to sleep?
For me, New York is the entrance to the world here in the United States. That's my opinion.
Well, literally.
I mean, where can you find Jewish, Hispanic, Asian, South American, Central American, South African, wherever you come from in one city? Like, there's actual places where you can go to where you can have a great Jewish meal, a great Spanish meal, a great Italian, great Asian, Chinese, whatever. Not a lot of places do that. You know, not a lot of places do. When I go visit other states and everything, I'm like, hey, where do you guys get this from? Oh, we get it from P.F. Chang's. That's not a real Chinese restaurant. You know, a real Chinese restaurant is Uncle Wok or Blue Dragon up the block where it's,
right.
You know, you get your greasy rice and everything. That's Chinese food, you know. But, you know, some people consider it that. I remember when I was in the Army, I went to a Subway's in Oklahoma and they were serving crab meat sandwiches, and this is way before
Oklahoma. Yeah, don't trust crab meat in Oklahoma.
I know. I didn't taste it because they were like, "Oh, this is." They were over there. It was like, "This is authentic New York sandwiches." I said, "No, it's not. We don't buy our ham from an envelope and put it on a sandwich. We get it cut on a machine or by a knife and everything." But you know, I know I was born here, and people could say their city's the best or whatever the situation may be.
No. New York is the best. They used to come out there.
New York, it's different. It's like New York is true what Frank Sinatra said. If you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. Rather, it's shows, wrestling, entertainment, you know, a business, a career. I mean, if you make it here and you're successful here, nothing compares to New York City. You know,
let me ask.
Go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say the experience at Madison Square Garden, where I got to shoot ringside. But if you went to the Nassau Coliseum or you went to the Boston Gardens or Philly Spectrum or Cap Center in D.C., it wasn't the same experience as New York's Madison Square Garden at all. That place was so special. Yeah, but I mean, you and I we were walking in the Village for like 5-10 minutes and we see Steven Tyler and Joe Perry and Steven Tyler's daughter, Liv, or something walking around.
I used to play handball with Matt Dillon. Wow. Matt Dillon used to play handball with us on the right across the street from the 9th Precinct, downtown Manhattan. And the guy was like a regular guy. He would just have a beer with us and everything, talk crap with us, and he never like flaunted money or anything like that. How
was his handball game?
He was real good. He was really good. He was pretty good, you know, and he was just a down to earth person. We used to hang out with I don't know if you remember back in the day, I forget his name. He was an African American comedian. He was a ventriloquist. And he used to be on shows.
Willie Tyler?
Yeah, he used to hang out with us at the 2nd Avenue Deli.
Wow.
Walk in there
I just thought of Billy Tyler and Lester, and
we used to have great times with them. Great. Bruno Sammartino was the nicest man ever to meet. And I was like 7-8 years old with my father carrying boxes of lobster and flounder and stuff because he was having like a party and barbecuing. And he was the sweetest man you could ever meet. I mean, like, you shook his hand, he shook your hand like a man. Like, welcome to my home. His son at the time was just starting to work out. He was a monster. And I was like, Daddy, that's Bruno Sammartino. I was like, yeah, we deliver fish. He had a house out in Coney Island where he used to do his little things and stuff like that. One of the most sweetest men you could ever meet. Meanwhile, in the ring, he was a beast.
Evan and I knew him well. One thing I wanted to ask is, I would come out and stay at Arizzi's house, John Arizzi's, and around 73, he was giving me the tour, Lincoln Center, all these incredible places. And it was like past midnight. And there was this one place, I think I've asked Evan about this, and he might have recalled it from the early to mid 70s, where it was like a parking lot that had been abandoned, and it was like full of hookers. I mean, there was like 200 there. I'd never seen anything.
Oh, that's the West Side.
Yeah.
What's that?
Evan, you know what he's talking about? The meat market area.
Yeah, meat market. Yeah.
The meat market area. That was like 42nd.
I thought it was an actual place where people went to the butcher shop, but no, it was.
That's the meat market. Have you guys ever seen that movie Cruising with Al Pacino?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Long time ago.
Okay, that's in that area during that time. That was 8th Avenue, 9th Avenue, 11th Avenue, 12th Avenue, all the way to the water.
Anything you want to see. And Evan, remember how we got upset when Giuliani started cleaning up? He cleaned it up, and I go, wait, we still need the peep shows and all the cool stuff.
Yeah. Listen, I grew up, I'm very fortunate to say I survived it, but I grew up during the Son of Sam era.
Yeah, me too.
I grew up, and Evan, you're a New York City boy like me. 1978, the night of the dogs, in the summer when the lights went out, okay? We survived the crack era. I mean, New York, I saw New York evolve from where it was like almost nothing and still come out to be what it is. Come on, we had 9/11. They took out our two front teeth on 9/11, and we still rebuild. We still came back. We still brought people in. We got some of the greatest.
You guys were hit so hard with Corona recently.
Yes. I live right across the street from Elmhurst Hospital, which is one of the big epicenters where when Corona hit in Queens. And these people fought their asses off. Excuse the language. They fought their asses off to help all these people out.
It's an adult show. Go ahead.
And let me tell you something. I never seen so many caterers, so many volunteers that came out to help these people every single day. I live literally right across the street. That's my hospital. That's where I go if I get sick or whatever. And it goes to show how New York was. Like, we're not letting this take away our city. We're not letting this take away our people. Despite the racism that's going on out there, despite the shootings and Corona and inflation, whatever you want to talk about, New York can pull together when it has to. When it has to, it'll pull together. And you see that in the people, after the terrorist attack, we saw what happened in Times Square with the gentleman said something, say, hey, there's something wrong in this truck. People could die. And it turns out it was a bomb. Other people would be like, oh, it's none of my business. Let me keep walking. New Yorkers can be nosy when it's the right moment. They can be nosy. Like, hey, this doesn't look right.
Thank God for that.
Huh?
Thank God for that.
Yeah,
people are a little more aggressive, and they're not pussies. They're willing to, do the right.
Listen, like I said, despite, like my brother did 27 years in the military. He did 8 tours in overseas. He lives in Augusta, Georgia. He loves it down there. He's raising his daughters down there.
On the eve of Memorial Day, we thank your brother for his service.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I thank and once in a while he gets the itch. He misses home. Once in a while he'll come and regenerate. Bring home some old-fashioned Cat's Deli pastrami down to the house, because he'll drive from Georgia to here, pick up stuff, and then drive back.
Wow.
And he says it. He goes, look, I wouldn't want to raise my daughters in New York now because the way things are now. But he said, if I can raise my daughters at the time that when we were growing up, when it was more innocent, it was more, it was a lot crazier, but it was more pure. Like we got to the problem right away. Like once you start, like, listen, cut the shit out. Your neighbor will catch you stealing something and tap you in the head and go tell your father, listen, I saw your son trying to steal from Mario's fruit store, and then you get an ass whipping in the house because your neighbor saw you do that. Now everything is like you can't do this, you can't do that. I mean, what they call abuse today was discipline when I was growing up, and I think I did okay. Yeah, I never been to jail. I don't use drugs. I don't drink. I'm okay. But these kids now,
I don't either. But I'm thinking of starting. No, that's no help. Speaking of that, you're a stand-up comic who has wrestled. So if you could get somebody to attack you on stage, you'd be the perfect guy.
Oh, let me tell you something.
What do
I'm
you
gonna tell you this right now.
Yeah.
Let me tell you this right now. If there was a real Puerto Rican New Yorker hosting the Oscars, Will Smith would have never made it off that stage.
Yeah.
I tell you that right now. Will Smith would have never made it off that stage. I would have forget about it. Puerto Rico would have put out a 007. Remember those? The old 007 switchblades? Where you going? Where you going, Will? Real smooth.
And you don't think that was at all a work by any?
Oh, that was no work. He destroyed.
See, I still think in the back of my mind, I still think that there might be some weird thing where these guys somehow. I mean, hey, we're all in the wrestling business. The works happen all the time, right?
Exactly.
I mean,
but you know what? Honestly, I think it was true. But Will got his head screwed up with that lady. Okay, let's keep it real here.
Well, remember he laughed initially.
Yes.
Rock's thing, and then he looks over her, and it was the wrong reaction.
She's pissed. Because come on, guys, let's keep it real here. First of all, they're not rich because of her. Okay, Jason's lyrics did not make that much money. Yeah. Okay, Will Smith is the one that keeping that family together. Okay, and for her to put out their business on the red table, you know, there's a kitchen table at home for that. Let's keep it real, you know. And there's a lot of pressure coming to him from all directions. Okay, because of what she's done publicly. And we all seen that some of the stuff she said about the guy, and you're like, come on, man, Will's a nice guy. You never hear anything about him. You never hear anything negative. You never hear about abuse or alcohol or anything. And here's this lady putting out all this dirt, making him feel less of a man. And here you are on the biggest grand stage of all. You're laughing, and she gave you a look like you're really not going to do anything about it. And he went up and did it. Come on. And it was the first time, and not to sound like, you know, I'm an activist or anything. It's the first time ever that an African-American producer produced the Oscars. It's been 2 years since we had an audience in the Oscars. We finally got a day that everybody can shine, and you went and did this?
It was disrespectful. Disrespectful.
Everybody, I mean, even, I don't care if you're black, white, Chinese, whatever. Me being a comedian, that was wrong. You know, that was wrong. If you felt a certain way, I've said jokes where people got offended and that they will come to me at the outside. Hey, guy, listen, I loved you until you did this bit. You know, I'm a little offended by, okay, I understand. It happens. But you don't go on
a dialogue, not a physical. Look at Patti LuPone, Evan. She is always taking it to the audience. We've seen her like 2-3 times, but just like a week and a half ago, she saw some guy not wearing his mask properly, or a female, and she called him on it, and she started cursing this audience member out, and she said, I'm not going to, you know, you probably saw it. I hope you saw it. But there is the total opposite of, you know, she wasn't going to let anybody give her shit, and then that person started saying, oh, well, I pay your salary, and she said bullshit, and called bullshit on her. Patti LuPone is not a longtime Broadway actress for decades and decades, award-winning, top of the game. She doesn't take shit from anybody.
Yeah, but being a comedian, you know, you're not going to be, I might not be the type of comedian you guys like, but I'll be something that somebody else likes. And because you don't like my type of comedy, it doesn't give you the right to go on stage or throw something at me or anything like that.
For the record, I actually do like your comedy.
Huh?
I actually do. For the record, I actually do like your comedy.
Thank you.
Been entertaining tonight. But can you tell us a little bit about how the comedy element of what you do as a stand-up interacts with what you do as a wrestler, and how you interact, how you think of comedic elements to add to your wrestling shtick, so to speak?
Well, when I was wrestling, I started at 45. I started with Frankie Flo from LAW. He was a guest on my show, and he did some research on my father, and he found out my father was like one of the guys, Hispanics, that helped promote independent wrestling in the 70s around New York City area. So they did like a tribute thing, and they made it like they were insulting my father, whatever. That was the storyline. We went in, and I was tag teams with Crazy Ivan, and we beat his tag team champs, whatever. Then I take that and I put it into my comedy. When Evan, I know you know who Vince Steele is.
Yeah.
I had a match. Yeah, I had 2 matches with him, and this guy's been on my show. He's been on my talk show. I had 2 matches with him, and I tell the story of when we had our street fight match. He told me, I'm going to go out in the audience. I'm going to go to your girlfriend, and I want her to smack me because I'm going to insult her in some type of way. Mm-hmm. So I text her from the back. I said, okay, listen, Vince is going to come up to you. He's going to say a couple of words. Just smack him. Don't do nothing else.
Yeah.
I'm going to jump off the top, and I'm going to attack him. No, she got so happy that she was going to be part of the match. She actually went beyond what we told her to do. Yeah. And she's cursing him out, telling him all this stuff. And I'm in the ring waiting for him to smack her like I'm supposed to be hurt. And I'm saying to myself, this guy's going to fucking kill me. Yeah. Because here you are you're cursing his mother out. His mother passed away months ago. Oh, Shut the fuck up. This guy's going to kill me. Yeah. So I hear the smack. I get up. I run out the ring. And I jump on him, right? He puts me in a bear hug. And he's like, does it hurt? Does it hurt? I was like, no, but I'm sorry what Margie said. I have nothing to do with it. Don't kill me, you know? Yeah. It's just like, I talk about it on stage and people are like, oh my God. But Vince is like the biggest teddy bear on the planet, you know? So he told me, I'm going to jump off the top rope. You're not going to feel, and I didn't feel like that. I mean, he took care of me all the time. Some of the things that I talk about is like when we come up with a promo or we come up with a storyline to do the match, and things go wrong, you know, funny things. Like one time my underwear is actually split inside my gear, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't take off these. I had to go home in my wrestling pants because if I would have taken off my wrestling pants in the locker room, my ass and balls would be all over the place. So I try to incorporate some of the story because I don't want to give too much away of what goes on behind the scenes and everything, but it's a fun experience. You know, it's one of the best experiences I ever had. And to do it at the age of 45 and do it for a couple of years, that's what really helped me get through, like, the death of my father and stuff like that. And comedy is the greatest psychiatrist in the world, no matter who you are. You know, comedy to me is like you can let stuff out. You can talk about it. I talk about my stuff growing up as a kid. First time losing my virginity, or one time I smoked so much weed I thought Forrest Gump was talking in Spanish, and I did his voice in Spanish, and I did and it helps out to let go of stress and everything, and I you know, thank God, because of social media today and like TikTok and Facebook and everything. TikTok really opened up the doors for me. Because like 3 months ago, I was only at 700 followers, and now I'm up to almost 23,000. So what I did was, when it came out, you know, during the pandemic, there's no comedy clubs open. There was no way to go out and enjoy a good comedy show. So TikTok was like, okay, I'll bring the comedy to you. So I started acting out skits, doing my own original stuff, and it opened up a few doors. I got the book to get published, and I got other venues. I'm like June 9th, I'll be at the Broadway Comedy Club in New York. We're kicking off the Puerto Rican Day Parade weekend celebration. So I'll be doing that. I did a couple of shows already. I got more podcasts I've been invited to, and it's been a great experience now that a lot of doors are open. And Evan, again, thank you so much for inviting me on the show. I've always had great respect for Evan. I love your work. You know, the 365 days. God knows how many times I've watched it. God knows how many times I've watched it. I've watched The Wrestler so many times. And then when you're part of that world, it's like when you see the movies, you're like, you understand what they went through. You understand, because before I go, wrestling, I made better friends in the wrestling world than I did with outside the wrestling world. There's a brotherhood there. When I got sick, where I thought I was not going to make it, before ACW picked me up and helped me, you know, with their company, you know, of course, you know, William Biggs and everybody.
William Biggs is a good guy. I know.
Yeah, and when I was in the hospital, I mean, Lou Nova came to see me. I was in ICU and everything. Vince Steele, all these guys came to see me. And you're like, wow, here's a bunch of guys that we play fight in tights together. and put on a good show, and they show more loyalty than some of the people you've known for years. And
I agree with that. It's a weird family.
Yes,
That thing makes a very bizarre family, but it's a family nonetheless. You travel together, you go through hell together, you celebrate when it's a 500 person audience that you blow away, and your heart breaks when there's more wrestlers backstage than there are people watching the event.
And it hurts when some of them pass away. Like George Rosario passed away recently. Yeah. I met George through LAW, and when they were doing the honor for my father, he was the very, 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 very first wrestler that I got to meet outside the guys I was training with for the match, that came up to me and said, hey, it'll be an honor to wrestle in your father's name and everything. And we've been friends ever since, in the BWF and wherever else we were at. I mean, he was a funny guy. Yeah, he had his demons, but I saw him fight his demons and win, and for him to be taken away was very heartbreaking, because when you travel with these guys, believe it or not, we don't talk wrestling in the car. We talk about life, our kids, our jobs, our problems with our girlfriends because we're traveling or this and that, wherever. Hey, where are you sleeping? Well, this time I'm sleeping on the top bunk. You sleep on the bottom bunk. And or you drive halfway, I'll drive halfway. And that's how I got to know these guys. I got to know them, not the characters. And it's heartbreaking when someone that you traveled with, you broke bread with, you shared a locker room with, and everything passes away. It's like losing a cousin, losing a nephew or something. It's like, oh, come on, not the good ones,
George did my old show, and we would travel to my old show. General Romero, nice guy, man. I felt terrible.
Oh, you know what? When we were at the funeral, they asked us to say a few words. And a lot of guys went up, told stories, but they will go right into the sad point. I've always believed that if you're going to have me talk about you at your funeral, I'm not going to say, oh my God, I'm going to make fun of you. And we're going to talk about funny things that we did together. Evan, you know how small the BWF locker room used to be.
Yeah.
Okay? What's that? You're in the locker room and you're trying to get dressed and Georgie's titties on your fucking head going like this because you got no room. So I would talk about that at the funeral, and his father was laughing. I was like, what's that? You're trying to put on your gear, and here's George with his fat titty on your head talking about like, yo, move over. I got to put on my shirt or something. And I told the story, and his father got up, gave me a hug. He said, finally, somebody said something funny about my son. My son was a jokester. My son was a guy who loved life. He loved to laugh, And I said, look, I'm telling you the truth. This is what your son did with me, And I always remember those times that we sat together and we had dinner after a match. BWF didn't really pay that much, And I'll be like, yo, George, you hungry? Yeah, but I said, listen, I know he didn't pay you, but I got some money. Let's go have pancakes and sausage at the diner or something after a match. Yeah. And we would eat together and just tell stories. Like, yo, did you see how my tit hit the guy when I slammed him and everything? We're talking crap. And, it's a brotherhood. It's a good brotherhood. I saw it with my dad and his guys. I saw it with my experiences. And I hope that these younger guys that are coming into the business respect that. Because once you respect the locker room, and you respect the guys who were there before you, things will go easy for you. Things will go good for you. But a lot of these kids now, there's no honor in the locker room anymore.
Rafael, before we go, tell us about your show also.
Yeah, my show is on every Wednesday night. It's on Facebook Live. It's on a station called the LDM Network. They have a page that you can look on. It's I've been doing this since 2006, before we had social media or whatever. The show is called Raw and Ready, the R&R show. I hold nothing back. I'll talk about whatever is on my mind or whatever topic I get. We're the type of show, like, let's say, for instance, you got the Kim Kardashian and Kanye West situation. Everybody's talking about that. No, I want to know what their lawnmower guy sees. I want to know what the maid sees, the babysitter. What does she hear? That's where the juicy gossip is, So that's where I go, and I'm proud of it. It's been going on for a long time, and it's doing well now because of the platforms and everything. I've had plenty of guests there. I've had Tony Richardson 3 times on my show. I've had, of course, Team Splendid, Vince Steele. At one time I had a segment called Turnbuckle Talk, where I would bring independent wrestlers in and tell their stories. But I always did it, and I always told them, do it without the character. I want to know I want people to know who you are. Everybody knows your character, but I want to know who you are, how you got started. And they all have beautiful stories to tell and everything like that. And that's basically it. It's on every Wednesday from 7 to 8 on the LDM network on Facebook Live.
Well, when you run out of absolutely everyone in the world to interview, I'd be available to.
Oh, please, anytime.
Well, you're
I
at the very end of the list.
On my show. I want Evan on my show because I had everybody from Team Splendid except you.
Yeah, I'll come on. I'll be happy to.
And again, guys, I thank you so much. I've always been a fan of you guys. I've always respected your knowledge and everything in the wrestling business. I know I'm the young cat here, but I always bow my head to the elders. Thank you guys so much for having me.
I was born in '67. Don't
Hey, listen,
with these two guys.
If you were if you're older than me, I gotta respect you.
I was born in 27. Okay.
Evan, again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Rafael.
Also, thank you guys so much.
Great.
Also, wait, before you go, make sure you give your list of all the social media ways that people can get a hold of you.
Oh, wait, where'd my camera go? Where'd it go? Here I go. You can find me on Facebook under the name Rafael Gee, RafaelGee. Same thing with TikTok. It's Rafael Gee 116. Rafael Gee on Instagram, and basically that's it. TikTok.
And remind them how they can get your book. How they can get.
They can get the book on Amazon.com. It's under Confessions of a Concierge by Rafael Gracia Jr. Or you can go on ajbpublishing.com and you can buy it there.
Excellent. When you're ready to do your book in December, when you're going to do your second book, please, we want to have you back on the show.
Yes. It's already written, but we have to wait a few months because I think in a few months they'll be putting this one on Kindle, and people can get it on Kindle also. But the second one is like, I love doing this one. Don't get me wrong, but the second one's more personal because it's about me growing up in the 80s in Brooklyn, East New York, Brooklyn, and in Manhattan. And a lot of the stuff I told you about the Delancey Street movies and everything is in there. And it'll give you a pretty good idea, like, oh, now we know why he's the way he is. You know what I'm saying? So It'll be interesting to have.
All right. Well, it's great having you on, and we're looking forward to having you on in the future. We'll have a couple minutes to wrap up with Evan and myself, but we'll let you go so that you can get a little bit of rest here.
Thank you, guys. God bless you all. Please stay safe, guys. Take care.
Thank you so much. All right, now it's just us three. Got a couple minutes.
What a great guy. We didn't have to ask him any questions. He's one of those that could just have talked the entire time, and he's entertaining.
Over the years, whenever you have stand-ups on, these guys, you just let them go. You don't even need to interview. Just let them go. The guy was great.
Yeah. Well, it's especially with the holiday coming up and everything. It was nice to have him available for us tonight, and really appreciate that. And any updates from the AEW?
No, I don't have it on. I'm just, or I would catch hell like when I was typing or what have you.
Right.
The guy we're going to have on next week, and you guys are, particularly Evan, are nice enough to let me have a couple of minutes to get this guy. And Glenn Bray is a longtime compatriot of Steve Yohe, and the two of them in Los Angeles filmed Freddie Blassie and Hardboiled Haggerty giving people a hard time at Venice Beach in 1962. They actually filmed this stuff. So he's going to talk about this book project he has. But this guy goes back way before me and Mike Tenay to the late 50s Los Angeles, when Jules Strongbow was battling other promoters to control Southern California wrestling. And Jules Strongbow is one of those total geniuses of wrestling in terms of a booker after he retired from wrestling. And then the weird thing was he took on a wrestling heel who had a long, many years feud with Freddie Blassie and Charlie Moto, Mr. Moto, and they were known as they were the only tag team bookers in the industry. So this guy's an expert on Jules Strongbow, and in partnership with Mr. Moto, they booked, and Lou Thesz even came in and helped out those guys in the office for a time. It was a magical period, late 50s, early 60s, when the WWA was created. Ed Carpania recognized as the first champion who would drop the strap to Blassie, and Bearcat Wright and Bo Brazil. So when they talk about African-American world champions, we had the first ones way before Ron Simmons. We had Bearcat Wright and Bobo, both had multiple title reigns, and Pedro Morales way before he won the Tri-WF title from Koloff in '71. Pedro was already twice WWE World Champion, you know. So,
and Evan, do you want to talk about your guest for next week?
He's got a big one, the main guest, really.
I have the Macho Man. He does a great Randy Savage impression, and he's a legit wrestler himself. So it's not just.
Is that his gimmick though? Does he do like Jay Lethal, come into the ring as Randy, or no?
He does Randy, and he's an authority on Randy, and he also has his own show. It's going to be an interesting mix next week, and I just want to announce that I was hired as the senior editor for Pro Wrestling Stories. And
Perfect.
If you're not familiar with it, JP Zarka is the editor-in-chief, and there's millions upon millions of readers, and they do a great job with history. It's none of the.
Well, we've had a number of Pro Wrestling Stories authors on our show. So we're no strangers to it, but I'm really proud that you got the PWS editorship job. That's fantastic.
Thank you. We had Javier Oyston and many of the writers.
Benny Scala.
Benny Scala and Javier, between them, have done over 100 articles, over 150 articles.
Yeah.
And they don't do like the overwrought Raw reviews or SmackDown reviews. It's real history. Proud to be part of it, and Mike writes for them as well. I've done over 50 pieces for them.
I've even done one for them. So it's a great site, and a lot of great articles on there. We do encourage people to go check it out. So anyway, any comments about anything in the new, wrestling in the news? Stephanie McMahon saying that she's gone.
I watched that NASCAR thing, and they keep advertising that Lacey Evans was going to be the Grand Marshal and blah, 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 blah. So what happens, and this is, the day I get Sports Illustrated, or yesterday, whole article on women, having to do so many things to make it as athletes. So this is the whole issue of the June Sports Illustrated is on women overcoming sexist stuff and having to, fight for their rights and not be viewed as, objects, and wearing skimpy costumes, like the tennis, or there were some gymnasts in the Olympics, and they got some shit for not wanting to wear the revealing outfits. So Lacey Evans at this thing, she's paired with another woman who is a Marine who does all the talking, and then all Lacey does is say, "Gentlemen, start your engine." She said nothing, but she was wearing that weird looking bathing suit with the legs cut out, so she's almost half naked. And I don't mind, obviously I'm not prudish, I don't care about that, and with her jeans, low riding, and I go, didn't WWE tell her to like dress up for this thing or something? She's representing the company. That happened today, like at 2 Pacific time for this NASCAR huge event, not quite the level of the Indianapolis 500, that's the biggest car race thing in the world, but I just go, Jesus, why is she wearing like the bathing suit thing that she wears on WWE with her boobs hanging out and everything? It's like, and she's being talked up as this Marine who's, additionally a pro wrestler. It just it felt wrong. And maybe she was told to wear that, but would have liked to seen her, just be dressed up like the other female professionally and not, half naked. I'm sure all
I don't
those.
think we'll ever be able to count on Vince McMahon to suggest that anyone does the right thing. I think the first time that happens, it's more of a coincidence than it is by design. He always thinks any publicity is good publicity, and we know that isn't always the case. Evan, you got anything to add to the?
Yes, very, very shortly, all of our back episodes of Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast will be on Pro Wrestling Stories. We're working on that as we speak.
Oh, really?
The entire backlog will be available to our millions of readers. And when I say millions of readers, it's not hype. It's legit. So
what about your book? When is the target date for the new book?
Later this year. I don't have a specific date. It's called Wrestling Rings, Blackboards, and Movie Sets. And I wrote 100 stories, not all wrestling, but there are pieces on Nikolai, Tiger Khan, Johnny Valiant, Melissa Coates, Larry Sweeney, so on and so forth. Also the making of the wrestler, and
Looking forward to it very much.
yeah, very. I've been reading it in various forums, and there's some very powerful things. A lot of good people that we lost, mutual friends that Mike and I both had, and I was on I was at Nicole Bass's deathbed. I was there the night before they pulled the plug. There's a lot of really heart-wrenching stuff in there, but it's not all grim either. There's a lot of funny stuff, and
what a pixie sense of humor. I remember her at different events out in California. Like there was this women's convention, and I thought, it's like a pro wrestling event in San Diego. And it was a little bit different, but it was like where those guys would pay some of like the Glow ladies and some others it was like apartment house wrestling. But Nicole Bass just called bullshit on it. And her late husband, who died, preceded her, Bob, was there. And she just had this great sense of humor that I know Evan knew even better than I did.
We once worked a convention in Rhode Island, which was a long drive from New York, and the driver, and his name is David Wilkins. He's one of the 350 Days producers. The whole trip, she's going as a rib. She's going, "Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet?" We're like one block out of the garage, So she did this for like hours, and she was a lot of fun. She was larger than life, literally larger than life. I mean, and just a good person. And so I have a piece on her, and 100 different pieces. And Jeff Archer, the production guy, he lost his wife for 40
years. Oh, that's right. Yeah, we talked about that. I forgot about Jeff's wife.
He lost his wife and his best friend, and he had various health issues, and that's why it's taken so long. But
Well, let's end it on a positive note if we can. Let's wish all of our viewers a happy holiday weekend, Memorial Day weekend, and be safe, everyone. And we'll see you all next week. Thank you so much, folks.
Good night, you guys.
Okay.